Project Beast now has a CGI trailer, gameplay footage, impressions from a 30-minute demo, and most importantly, a name. Let's talk about Bloodborne, and let's start with the gameplay. According to Masaaki Yamagawa from Japan Studios, the combat in Bloodborne is based on intense, life-threatening battles. Think about how you fight in the Souls games. You're encouraged to take out enemies methodically, but you're also encouraged towards a passive sort of block, wait, and attack when the enemy is open style of combat. You probe for weaknesses and you exploit them. Bloodborne is taking the strategic element from the Souls series, but applying it in a different way. In Bloodborne, there's going to be a transition to a quicker, more offensive and active combat style with close-range weapons and guns. In the Souls series, you're tentatively exploring the level to make it through, but in Bloodborne, we've been told that we'll be under a more constant threat and attack, with every fight being a scrap to survive. In this game, it sounds like it will be preferable to take out enemies quickly before you can get overwhelmed, an offensive approach to combat rather than the defensive one we see in Souls games. That sounds really good. In terms of story, Bloodborne takes place in Yharnam, an ancient, forgotten city cursed with a horrible endemic illness. In light of the name Bloodborne, it seems very much inspired by the era of the Black Plague, except this illness is a little different. Rumors flying around suggest that the Bloodborne Plague is turning men into beasts. Another rumor is that you become more beast-like as you take the blood of your enemies, which could be some sort of twist on the hollow human form mechanic. Over the years, many hopeless and afflicted people have made pilgrimages to Yharnam in search of a cure. You are one of these travelers, navigating this gothic, horrific city, fighting off the endless, deranged, nightmarish creatures that creep from the shadows. We've only seen one protagonist so far, but it's just like the other Souls games, there's always that one character who is a symbol of that game. Because according to Famitsu, character customization is confirmed. In the same article, they note that it's going to be very similar mechanically to a Souls game, with the UI apparently more or less identical to the Souls UI at this point. There will also be online elements, and a few insiders have also mentioned that a 4-player co-op is an emphasis of this game, perhaps being more play-with-a-friend friendly than previous titles. In a previous screenshot, we saw blood flying through the air in a manner reminiscent of a soul. In the later video footage, the protag was becoming more and more drenched in blood, and finally, in the new trailer, the protagonist is cutting a beast purposefully with his saw cleaver. There's this emphasis on blood, and I'm sure it'll play into the game mechanically somehow. Just like we had Souls before, this might mean that we gain something from blood. And to think, when we heard that Miyazaki was being moved to a different project, he said that he wanted to work on a lighter-hearted game. I think he might have been messing with us. Famitsu notes that the game has been in development since the release of the Artorias of the Abyss DLC. Another interesting thing to note is that we haven't seen any of the footage from the gameplay leak a little while ago, but a 30-minute gameplay preview was shown behind closed doors at E3, and I have the details for you here. As I mentioned before, the game takes place inside a city. Environments will be densely layered as we dash through alleyways, across rooftops, within houses, ascending stairs and crisscrossing through adjoining rooms. Many paths will be available, and many will lead to the same point. So I imagine if you are a fan of the complex level design in Dark Souls, where levels twist around on each other, then it sounds like you're going to be a fan of this. And as I thought about the close-range combat that will take place inside houses, it reminded me of the saw cleaver we've seen within footage so far. The ability to transform it into a close-range weapon or a long-range weapon will really help you depending on whether you're fighting in a close corridor or in an open courtyard, for example. We've also been told that we should expect to see an entire class of transforming weapons as well. These weapons will have different properties depending on the form they take. For example, the saw cleaver will be able to crush enemy guards in its shortened form. This should add a really good layer of depth and versatility to the combat. You might also be wondering about guns, and another surprising thing that we learnt was that guns are actually intended to be, more commonly, a close-range weapon that will help with your offensive versatility. And that's really what a lot of this has been about. It's been about giving you this offensive versatility that will allow you to cut down enemies more effectively. In one of the gameplay previews, a player was shown stunning an enemy with a gunshot and then performing a finishing critical attack. Miyazaki has apparently said that you cannot play this game the same way you would play Demon Souls. You can't just stand back and bait enemies until they're open. No, in this game, you have to take a more active approach to combat. or you risk getting overwhelmed by a more constant assault. So think about it, you actually have to cut down enemies before they overwhelm you, because it sounds like they might be coming at you at a more constant rate. Keeping this in mind, it makes sense that we should be holding a gun in our offhand instead of a shield, and I can see this shieldless, offense-focused shift being the biggest difference between the Souls series and Bloodborne. The main enemy in Yharnam are the humans turned beast by the infection plaguing the place, but that's not all you should expect to see. In the footage, enemies were said to be hiding in the shadows, ready to jump out at you and join the assault of other enemies. A viewer described mutilated crow-like enemies hopping towards the player, and there's this abundance of lycanthropes and beasts seen so far. The difficulty is said to be similar to Demon's Souls, and Miyazaki says to expect the same satisfying feeling you get from overcoming adversity in a Souls game. To me, the discussion is less about difficulty and more about the different flavor of strategic gameplay we'll be seeing, and I'm really curious to see how well faster-paced combat will be developed within the framework of a Souls game. Bloodborne is being targeted for a spring release in 2015, exclusive to the PlayStation 4 platform. It's exclusive because Sony owns the Demon's Souls IP and actually co-developed this with From Software and their own Sony Japan studios, similar to what they did back in the day when they helped create Demon's Souls. The team is aiming to get the game at 30 frames per second at 1080p. I've listed a lot of sources in the description, and I really want you to check them out to support the people who translated articles and attended these behind-the-scenes events. Subscribe to hear more about Bloodborne news when it drops, and I'll catch you guys next time.